Okay, previously we were looking at this simple economic model with the two brothers and the family in Italy. They were producing olives and tomatoes to produce olive oils. And we had two brothers. We looked at Mario, the little brother, and he worked from 9 in the morning till 5 o'clock. Now we're going to look at the older brother, Luigi, and take a look at his production possibility frontier. So we've got Luigi, the older brother. He also works from 9 to 5, 8 hours. He's producing tomatoes and olive oil. And here I've got his graph. As before, we've got X on the horizontal axis, tomatoes produced kilograms, and then we've got liters of olive oil on the vertical axis. And for the sake of argument, let's say that Luigi, if he works for 8 hours, he can produce 10 kilograms of tomatoes. Now, just arbitrary number, I'm just making this up. So we've got 10 kilograms down here if he only produces tomatoes. If, on the other hand, his father sends him off to get olive oil, well, then we'd say, for the sake of argument, he can produce 10 liters of olive oil. Just, again, making up a number here. So we can show this graphically here. He'd be up at this red point, where you'd have 10 liters of olive oil. Of course, his father could send him half and half. That means 4 hours getting tomatoes and then 4 hours getting liters of olive oil. And presumably he'd have at that point, well, he'd get about 5. He'd be at a point like this where he'd have about 5 kilograms of tomatoes. So sort of put a 5 in here. And he'd have about 5 liters. So we put that point up there. And of course, then his father could say, well, spend 3 hours and 27 minutes in one place and the rest of the day in the other place. And he could pick any number of points along here, this whatever number of kilograms they happen to have. And I could join up all these points, which I've done. And now we've got Luigi's production possibility frontier, or PPF. Fine. So it's very similar to his younger brother, just the graph looks a little bit different. Okay, so the next step is to put, once again as well, of course, then his older brother, he wouldn't be able to produce a point like this. That's impossible. He could produce at a point inside here, for example. This is the older brother, Luigi, but of course, then the father would say, what were you doing with your time? And I've simplified this down. There's really only two outputs. There's no goofing off. You can't, sit under a tree looking at his phone, because that would be another output, and then I have a three-dimensional object, which I don't want to draw. So the next step now is to put the two brothers together, and we'll put this into to see what the family production possibility frontier looks like. So here I've drawn Marius, the little brother's, his PPF on the left-hand side, and I've got his brothers on the right-hand side. So I've got the two of them, and what I really want to do is, in effect, add these two together to create a new graph for the family. Now the question is like, how can you add two graphs together? Like, is it possible to do that? They're not really, I guess you could turn them into equations and maybe do it that way. So one first step in looking at this problem is to notice that if, for example, Mario were to produce here, that means to say he spends the whole day getting olive oil, he would be able to get 4 liters. And if Luigi also spent the whole day getting olive oil, well, then he'd be able to produce 10 liters of olive oil. So that means we'd have a point like this here, 14 liters. He'd be getting 14, and he'd be getting 10. So as a result, the family would be able to have 14 liters as a total. Now, by the same logic, of course, we could imagine that if Mary were to produce 8 kilograms and his older brother produced 10, then we'd be down here at 18. So we've got these 2 points. We know those are possible. And the question really is, well, what do we do between these two lines? And previously, we just drew a straight line. So intuitively, you might say, well, that makes sense. We'll just draw a straight line between the two. And now we've got that. And this is wrong. And I want to show you why it's wrong, and that's what we're going to look at next. It's one of the key ideas of this lecture, if you will. What I've done here is I've drawn the two as before, and we've got the 2 points, 14 liters and 18 kilograms, which we know are possible. We've got the two brothers. Now, take a look at this idea. Imagine the family is up here at this point here, 14. They're producing about to produce 14 liters of oil. It's in the morning, 9 o'clock, and the father's going to send them off to get liters of olive oil. And let's say the father suddenly decides that really they also need 2 kilograms of tomatoes. Well, that means they're going to have to give up some olive oil. So the question is, who should the father send to get them? Now let's take a look at this. If he sends Luigi to get those 2 kilograms, here I've drawn it here, that means Luigi would have to give up 2 liters of olive oil. You can see that he'd be going down his ppf. So he'd go from 10 down to 8, he'd lose 2. And I've drawn the ratio here like this. If, on the other hand, the father were to send Mario, the little guy, Mini Mario, to go and get it, you can sort of see it here. He'd get 2 kilograms of tomatoes, but he'd only have to give up 1 liter of olive oil. So in that sense, it would be very smart for the father not to send Luigi to get those 2 kilograms of tomatoes, but rather to send Mario. And so a way to show this on the graph is to take Mario's ppf and put it first initially. And sort of imagine it this way. You can get 4 from him, so we'd be down here to 10 if you asked him for the total amount, and then we'd have over here something like 8 kilograms of tomato. Now, of course, if you wanted more tomatoes after that, you'd have to send Luigi to go and get them. And the point you'll see here is that this new ppf for the family bulges out. It's not a straight line. And that's the idea. This is due to the fact, and if you look at them carefully, you can see this, the slope of the 2 brothers is not the same. They have a different, remember the slope of the ppf is the opportunity cost. So the question then is, well, who should you send under which circumstance? And that's going to be due to a difference in whoever has the lower opportunity cost. In this case, we can argue that Mario is the tomato guy because he has a lower opportunity cost for producing tomatoes, which means identically is that Luigi is the olive oil guy. So if you were down at this point here, for example, and you needed some olive oil, then you'd send Luigi to go and get them first.